the names released in today's document dubbed as that of my next guest, Vicky Ward, investigative journalist and Substack author of Vicky Ward Investigates. She was one of the first journalists to begin covering Epstein back in the early 2000s. And Vicky, I'm guessing your name was included because of your extensive coverage of Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. I mean, I've obviously known about this for a long time. I knew that I was potentially on a witness list for both Virginia and Ghislaine Maxwell. Obviously, I was never deposed, but it would have been because when I profiled Jeffrey Epstein back in 2002 for Vanity Fair magazine, I had a horrific conversation with Ghislaine Maxwell, actually. I had met two women, sisters called Annie and Maria Farmer, whose names were also, unsealed last night, who had told me on the record about their encounters with Ghislaine and Jeffrey. Annie had been underage at the time, and I had known Ghislaine socially, as you and I have talked on your show before. And I wound up in this very unexpected position of having to ask Ghislaine Maxwell if she had ever given 16-year-old Annie Farmer a topless massage. We had a deeply unpleasant conversation in which she told me that not to be so ridiculous, she had much better things to do with her time than go around giving people massages, that these two sisters ought to be incredibly grateful to Jeffrey Epstein for having shown any interest in them whatsoever. And, and she said, don't be ridiculous, Vicky, you and I are journalists. She described herself as a journalist, which I thought was interesting.
Ghislaine did?
Yes, and she said, you know better than to believe these sorts of people. And I was reminded last night, as I read through those 900 plus pages, of that awful arrogance and haughtiness and the sort of better than everyone else, because it was there on every page and it was very hard to read.
Vicky, there are a lot of names here, but many of them have been public before. But some of the details are new, particularly involving Prince Andrew. One victim testifies under oath that she took part in group sex with Prince Andrew and several other young girls.
Right. I mean, gosh, some of this, Elizabeth, did come up at Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal trial. And it was a little bit frustrating as a journalist because this group sex thing was mentioned. Obviously, Prince Andrew's name was mentioned. Virginia Roberts was never in that courtroom. So it's, for us, we're sort of trying to put all the pieces of this together now. Obviously, Virginia was not in Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal trial. This is a civil lawsuit. Prince Andrew has settled with Virginia, and so
right, but these are new details. I mean, the point is that I know he's proclaimed his innocence. These are new details that we haven't heard before, and they're certainly sorted. There are also three other names that are still blacked out in this. Names of one victim says she was ordered to have sex with these three men. Their names are blacked out, but one is reportedly a prince, one is reportedly the owner of a hotel chain, and we know nothing about the third. Why are these names still blacked out?
That's a great question. I mean, I've been thinking about the Prince thing because we know, Jeffrey Epstein had photographs of himself with Middle Eastern royalty. He talked about African princes. And obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell, had an extraordinary Rolodex. She would have known actually any number, I suspect, of European princes. So that'll be interesting. And, there are, when it comes to the hotel magnate, there are some names that we know already were in their social circle. So I guess I'm trying to do this jigsaw puzzle. We'll know in due course. I have to believe.
I guess very quickly, 10 seconds if you can, Vicky. I'm still struck by the sheer volume of these names, whether it's, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Michael Jackson, Tom Pritzker, Bill Richardson, David Copperfield, Stephen Hawking. You cannot believe that all these people were in Jeffrey Epstein's social circle.
Well, that's the sort of shocking thing about it, and the sort of missing piece from what we've read so far. We have a horrifying, sordid portrait of what was going on in his homes and how the pyramid with his staff, that poor butler describing himself as a human ATM, how that worked. It's not yet clear what all these powerful men were doing around Jeffrey Epstein. Was it just the girls? Or, as I've always sort of reported, what was he doing financially that was so useful to them?
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.